Today we are going through the process of doing raw packed meat in the pressure canner. So pressure canning is something that happens a lot around here, especially during harvest season. But right now we have a problem with our freezers and the fact that they are full and we need to be able to put more in there. So today we are pressure canning some stewing lamb. One thing I will say is this method works for any meat, whether it's beef, lamb, pork, chicken. I guess you could even do the same if you really wanted. I've not actually tried pressure canning chicken, but hey, give it a shot. Let me know in the comments if this is sort of the same method you use, because then I'll know in the future. But what you're going to need is your pressure canner. I have a Presto pressure canner. So in here I have 3 liters of water. This is what you're going to start with. We have it on a medium heat to warm up because you want this pretty hot when you put these jars in. This is a super simple process of raw packed meat. You'll need some boiling water, obviously your meat, and clean jars. The nice thing about pressure canning is that you don't need to go through the process of sterilizing these jars. They just need to be clean, and you need your rings to still be in the hot water so that the rubber is ready to form a nice seal. At least that's what I understand. I've always still done my rings in the hot water. But we're going to get started with packing. It's straight packing of the meat into the jars, and then we'll bring you back. Now basically you don't want to put this meat in there too packed in. You still need space for the liquid to get in and around the meat. I like a chopstick, just kind of pushes it down a little bit. I also use the chopstick to remove air bubbles when that process is also needed. You want to leave about 1 inch of head space. So we started out with 8 pounds of meat. One thing that I will say is I'm a little bit particular about my meat, so I did cut off a whole lot of this fat and trimmings there, which we are going to render down and keep the lard for our use, and some of the other product will go to chickens and cats. But it ended up making us 9 pint jars, which is awesome. I always work in pint jars because that's about £1 pound per jar, which is about what we use typically in a meal unless we have company or that sort of thing. So next, and this isn't optional, but we still do this, is a ½ teaspoon of salt. I use a fine sea salt in each jar. So next we're doing a couple inches of boiling water in each one. Ooh, does that make a mess? I basically aim for about the halfway point. We are going to come and poke this around a little bit after. Alright, so like I said, we just kind of poke it down a little bit. Just going to wipe those rims, make sure there's no salt or liquid on there. Rings on. You want your lids on finger tightened. So basically I don't put the other hand on, I just tighten until the jar spins. Now occasionally you get a dud or lid that kind of needs a little bit of help, but for the most part this works quite well. Alright, so there you have it. So those are the basic steps up to this point. Next, we need to get these jars into the pressure canner. So next thing when you are pressure canning, you want to make sure, ooh, as I miss it? You want to make sure that you can see daylight through this hole. This is very important because that's your vent hole. And you also, one thing you should always double check is that that guy is tight. I've had this happen before where this has gotten loose and it does not actually push up to lock the thingy, and you're waiting a long time before you realize it, and then everything's kind of overcooked. So those are the tips on that. And what we need next is our ring around here, which is this rubber gasket. And I always oil that gasket when I use it. Just a little bit of olive oil, just enough to kind of wet your fingers. And you just go around like so. And basically that just prolongs that life of this gasket. I have been pressure canning with this canner now for almost 4 years, and it still looks brand new. So it's definitely something they don't tell you in the books, but it certainly makes a difference. And from that point, we just line up our arrows. I love this Presto canner. I actually am contemplating getting another one because we do a lot of canning. Lock that on. I turn it up to midway to high on my electric range here. I do use a glass top. I know that kind of concerns people sometimes, but we've never had a problem. And we're going to let this get to 10 pounds, a little over 10 to 11 pounds of pressure. When you have a gauge like this, 11 is what they recommend. And then we need to pressure can these pints for 75 minutes. Now you can do this in quarts as well. You'll just need 90 minutes, and you'd be using a tablespoon of salt if you were putting the salt in. But as I said, salt is optional, so I suppose you can really put however much you want in. So we're going to get this going, steaming, and then we'll bring you back. There you can see, it just popped up. That means that we're at pressurized enough. We're going to put our weight on, and we're going to wait for our little dial to get to 11. So we've reached our pressure level, and now we're going to start counting our 75 minutes as we gradually turn this down. We do not want it to dip back below that 10. Otherwise, we have to start counting our time all over again. So definitely something to note. Time does not start counting until you reach that proper pressure. And then if it drops below, you've got to start all over again. So you saw us can up that meat, and now it is time to use it. Chris is making us a wonderful stir fry, which I'm going to let him tell you all about what's in this gorgeous, wonderful, very healthy meal. But we're going to break open one of these jars of our canned meat.
Okay, well, I've already cut everything up, and so it just kind of looks like a bit of a mess. But we've got fresh tomatoes. We've got a whole lot of greens. There's stinging nettle and some beet tops and some kale, both red Russian and the dwarf curled kale. We've got some plantain, some lamb's quarters, a little bit of basil, some celery that we picked. What else is in here? There's some garlic, a small onion, both the green and the white part of it, and a little bit of ginger. So we're going to get this cooking, but first...
All right, so basically what we're going to do first, as you can see, there's quite a lard layer, I guess you'd call it, on top. We're going to scoop as much of that out as we can to stir fry these vegetables in. And then basically the rest is just going to kind of get poured in. All right, so we've kind of scooped out what we can here. I say that, and then there's more that comes. But you can see there's a bit of basically a lamb broth in there around the meat. So we're going to get these vegetables kind of cooked up. Or I say we, Chris is going to get these vegetables cooked up. And we're going to add this pretty much right at the end because being pressure canned, it's soft like a pulled meat already. So we don't want it to disintegrate to nothing.
There we go. We're cooking pretty good. Everything's cooked quite well. And one thing that I thought was awesome here with the canned lamb, I took the liquid from the jar and I actually used it to help make the sauce. So I've added peanut butter to this, some sesame oil, and a little bit of white wine vinegar, and this is sort of the result, I guess, and we will be putting this on rice. So the meat will be going in here shortly, but I just kind of wanted to show you partway through kind of what it looked like.
So it's time to do a taste test. We've got a nice piece of meat right there on the spoon. I'm actually seeing quite a few. Very impressed with the fact that it held its shape and texture, or at least it seems to have so far. Oh, wow. Chris's stir fry is very good as well. But that meat is like eating pulled pork, but it's pulled lamb. But very, very good. So super impressed with that. And this could come in very handy in the next little bit because we really have to get some stuff out of the freezer. So we might be doing some more canning.